Okay, hi again, and we're going to get into talking about the internet, online communications, and social media here, and so I think that this will be very relevant to you and the world that you live in and the day-to-day activities that you have online. Physical and psychological effects. Social media, without a doubt, has a powerful effect on our brains. Some people talk about it in terms of addiction. We're going to see a number of videos here, at least parts of them, so let's look at this one first.
Social media has become part of our nature. We post, we share, we like, we follow, we unfollow, we subscribe. But how is social media affecting us? A small study of 20 college students found a correlation between students who demonstrated higher levels of Facebook addiction and activity in the amygdala striatal system while they interacted with Facebook symbols. This activation was the same seen in those with substance addiction. In a 2016 UCLA study, teens were split into two groups. One was shown a photo with a high number of likes, and the other group was shown the same photo, but with fewer likes. Those who viewed the photo with more likes were more likely to like the photo themselves than the group who saw the photo with fewer likes. Again, it was the same picture. This experiment found activity in multiple parts of the brain when teens saw photos they took receive a lot of likes. In particular, the study found significant activity in part of the brain's reward circuitry known as the nucleus accumbens. Dopamine is released in the brain after positive social stimuli, such as likes and positive comments on social media. That photo she just posted, she got a bunch of likes, releasing dopamine into her brain and causing a feeling of satisfaction. Psychologist B.F. Skinner found that mice would respond to certain stimuli they knew resulted in a reward more often when the reward came at variable times.
Okay, I'm going to pause that. It goes on into a bit more detail, but I think you get the idea of how that works. How social media has changed the news, and we're going to look at here a lot about social media and the information that you receive about what is happening in the world and whether that is reliable or not. So let's look at this video, at least the first few minutes of it.
For all of the history up until this point, our communication structures have, for the most part, especially mass media systems, have been very top-down. And they've been controlled by a few people that had distribution control. If you look back, the church was really the first broadcast network. The church built out a very defined architecture of communication that was coming from a centralized place where very few people could have the word of God come down to them, and they had the ability to transcribe. This was at a point when literacy was very rare, and so you had only a few people that were literate that could transcribe this holy word. And then they would distribute it out to a local market where you had a big impressive building that had lots of iconography and lots of beautiful images inside of it, and the tallest building usually in the town, and they would ring the steeple at 8 a.m. and we would all congregate for Mass, and we would listen to one message from one incontrovertible truth from one source. And that's not too dissimilar from television architecture, right? You have a group of people in suits in New York or in Los Angeles, and they're deciding what's going to be on television, and then they distribute it to those towers, and at 7 p.m. prime time, we aggregate around a television that's been brought into our home, and we watch this one incontrovertible truth and this signal from a top-down approach. And when the internet started enabling people, first with this underlying network architecture of TCP/IP that allowed us to transcend time and distance, that allowed any node on the network to contribute to the system, And then we started seeing things like video sharing and photo sharing that allowed us all to become publishers. And then we had this kind of, now this layer of social that is redefining everything, where every single person is now a contributing node on the network, and every person that is part of that uses emotions and memes and content to distribute things in a horizontal fashion. And so what that's doing is that is destroying the ability to discern what is authentic, what is not, what's real, what's fake, what's commercial, what's non-commercial, what's sponsored, what's non-sponsored, what's a good idea versus a bad idea. And so when we exist in this free-form society where every node on the network can contribute something to the network, and it has no checks and balances, if you will, there is no top-down authority that's editing it or deciding what's real or not, then suddenly it becomes every node on the network's responsibility, having to learn a pattern of behavior that we are all responsible for the propagation of this content. Because
I'm going to pause him there. That's an interesting idea there, that we have a certain responsibility when we put things on the internet, and if we complain about the fact that you can't trust what's on social media, we all have some responsibility for that. So each of us has a responsibility to try to be as accurate and try to be as honest as we can be in what we share. So you know that there's been a lot of concern over fake news on social media. It is true that news seen on social media too often is not news at all. So let's get into that subject, and we'll look at a couple of items here at least.
Fake news is nothing new, but bogus stories can reach more people more quickly via social media than what good old-fashioned viral emails could accomplish in years past. A lot of these viral claims aren't news at all, but fiction, satire, and efforts to fool readers into thinking they're for real. Here are some strategies to shield yourself from fake news. Are you familiar with the source? Is it legitimate? Has it been reliable in the past? If not, you may not want to trust it. If a provocative headline drew your attention, read a little further before you decide to pass along the shocking information. Even in legitimate news stories, the headline doesn't always tell the whole story. But fake news, particularly efforts to be satirical, can include several revealing signs in the text.
So I'm going to pause that there. These are all worth watching the entire video if you'll take the time to do it. But we just don't have time to spend on every one of them. But I would add another thing there to what he said, and that is when you see something that pops up on social media, and especially if it seems very surprising, alarming, shocking, whatever term you want to place on that, is somebody else reporting that story? Is it showing up from multiple sources? Because if it's not, if it's just coming from one source, there's a very good chance that it's not accurate. So look to see if it's showing up from different sources on your Facebook feed, or whatever feed it would be. All right. So another item here on fake news.
You may be dazzled by your preteen and teens electronic fluency, but here's something far from dazzling. A new Stanford University study shows some 82% of middle schoolers could not distinguish between a native ad labeled sponsored content and a real news story on a news website's homepage. Here to discuss the disturbing implications of this is WSJ Work Family columnist Sue Schellenberger. Hi, Sue. Thanks so much for being with us. Tell us a bit more about how this Stanford study was conducted and what it found.
Well, researchers took 18 months and surveyed 7,800 students in 12 states, both affluent suburban schools and inner city schools and colleges, and set before them a series of social media posts and websites, and asked them to determine which was more credible, which was more influential to them. And the students pretty much across the board, most of them had trouble distinguishing ads from news. High schoolers were swayed by the a powerful photograph. Middle schoolers had trouble distinguishing an opinion piece from an actual news story. There was a lot of confusion about how to believe and see what we see online.
Okay, I'm going to pause that there. Again, a photograph can have a powerful influence. It carries a lot of emotion. And so if you see a photograph that's disturbing or that is in some way moving, that can have an influence beyond whatever the story might say. So be aware of that. I have to kind of move on through some things here that I wish I had more time for. I'll show you this that was a fake video of Mark Zuckerberg, who of course was the founder of Facebook and in some ways maybe the father of social media. But this video that was posted had him saying some very sinister, controversial things about social media and Facebook, and he did not say those things. So again, because of the technology that we have now, it's very hard to tell, even when something seems to be a legitimate video or photograph. It's hard to tell if it's real, and this is a very disturbing thing that we're having to deal with, and that you all are certainly going to have to deal with as you go on through your life. It's not going to get any simpler in all likelihood. Nice video there with the great former CBS newsman Bob Schieffer. It's interesting to see. So look at that if you have the time. Social media and reliability. Social media tends to emphasize what you like and tells you then what you want to hear. And that keeps you coming back for more and more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're hearing what is true, or that you're getting the whole picture of whatever the subject might be. So video or two here on that subject.
The Pew Research Center recently came out with a report on social media and how we use news and how we get it. You're watching this clip, so I thought you might be interested in news too. So let's talk about the report a little bit, Gabriel, and feel free to join in on the discussion, leave us some comments. So the first finding was that the top 3 social media sites from which people get their news are Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Yep.
So 3 in 10 American adults get at least some of their news through Facebook. What are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are this is really good news for Facebook and really bad news for anybody who's reading news on Facebook.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So a lot of times...
This worries me. No, this worries me because look, you're on Facebook, you tell Facebook who your friends are, you tell Facebook what you like, and then Facebook continues to promote posts that you've already engaged with, right?
Right.
Which means that if you see news from your friend and you like it, then they're going to keep delivering news from that friend. But the point of news is partly to open up your eyes to the rest of the world, to other points of view. So now what this is saying is that most people are just going to continue to get
the same type of information, at least on Facebook. Now, I mean, obviously, you can still go to other sites to get your news. There's YouTube, there's Twitter, there's news outlets, obviously, like online. You can read newspapers, magazines, et cetera, et cetera. But I do share your concern in that where Facebook is selecting what we see, especially in terms of news and news content.
So we'll pause that there. And it's one thing that she says there that is definitely worthwhile is that you should look for other sources. Of course, Facebook is one thing. There's Twitter. There's all the other social media sites. But not only that, but actual newspapers, broadcast TV and radio news, and so you should not just limit yourself to social media in terms of the information. All right, let's look at a video here that asks the question: Is the news broken because of social media?
Agenda. And in the case of politics, social media media platforms are not necessarily the best place to find factual news or information, but the problem is when there's something breaking, if there is some sort of emergency, if there's some sort of sensational moment that everybody's paying attention to, social media is where you go. I'm Renee DeResta, and I'm the Technical Research Manager at Stanford Internet Observatory. And what we do there is we look at how narratives and information spread online.
A lot of times your phone will suddenly seem to be blowing up, and these alerts are basically headlines of some big breaking thing on our Twitter feed and our Facebook feed that are, of course, designed to attract your attention, much more so than deliver a kind of nuanced take on what's actually happening in the world. My name is David Barstow. I've been a reporter and a journalist for 33 years. I now teach investigative reporting at the University of California, Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism.
So there's a lot of times when you'll see something trending, it's because it's a breaking news moment. If you click into the trend, you're going to find breaking stuff there that's going to come out faster than it's going to hit a newspaper site or the nightly news. And so there's a natural inclination for people to want to go and gravitate there during these moments to try to figure out what's happening.
Because of the speed of information and the design of the social platforms, everything looks basically equal. And on that small screen, it's very tough to actually distinguish quickly what are, in fact, the most important stories of the day. And that is like a huge challenge that did not exist in the way the media landscape worked, say, just 15, 20 years ago.
Misinformation and disinformation are a little bit different. They are separated by intent. So misinformation means something that's wrong, but it's very inadvertently wrong. It might not be true, but the intention is good. The disinformation side of things, that's where you see people who are deliberately intending to influence and to mislead someone.
We can find endless examples of crazy stuff that gets packaged in a way and gets pushed out certainly by social media influencers and others.
If someone is running a disinformation campaign, they have a particular agenda.
Okay, we'll pause that there. That's a very interesting point that they're making. They're about the difference in misinformation, which is just accidental, not intended to mislead, and disinformation, which is intended to mislead and is done deliberately and has, as she said there at the end, an agenda. So very important point there. Also, his point that he made, I think, is important, that things tend to look equal on social media, and everything looks about the same, and so you tend to give it the same weight, and maybe you really shouldn't give everything the same weight. News organizations are generally reliable sources of news, and I must say that I'm like a lot of other people, I've been somewhat disappointed in some of the things that have been reported in news media in recent times, but still generally news organizations are reliable, and they have an interest in being seen as reliable and trustworthy. So on their websites and in social media, then by and large, they are dependable sources of information. This is Channel 8's website, WFAA TV in Dallas, and at the time that we're recording this video, there was an interesting story about UFOs being seen over North Texas, and there were a lot of social media comments about that, and Channel 8 covered that story. So let's look at that. I think we may have to watch a commercial first, which is...
People all over the place saw something mysterious.
Well, in this case, we won't, so here we go.
People all over the place saw something mysterious in the sky last night. I know that when I saw the tweet, I said, there's an explanation, though.
Yeah, you might have looked up last night and thought you saw a UFO. And if you did, you're not the only one that thought that. We're seeing lots of pictures and videos like these showing what looks like a string of lights in the sky. It's about 9 o'clock last night. Maybe you saw it. Was it a meteor? Was it proof of alien life? No, it's kind of boring, just a bunch of satellites up in space. So a SpaceX rocket launched 60 Starlink satellites into orbit from Florida yesterday. Those satellites will eventually provide high-speed internet to just about anywhere in the world. If you happen to take any cool pictures or videos like these, we would love for you to send them to us. Use the hashtag #IamUp and tag WFAA Weather on Twitter.
So I'll pause it there, and it's interesting that they're asking for photographs from people to be delivered to them by Twitter. So there's that interactivity aspect of social media that connects traditional news media and everyday people. But Channel 8 covering a story there that had received a lot of attention on social media, and they were able to explain what it was that people had seen and what they were chatting about on social media. KLTV, Channel 7 in Tyler is a very, very good small market television station. They use Facebook, they use other social media, and they are constantly updating their social media feed with stories. And so via social media, again, you can access the information that by and large can be considered fairly reliable, coming from professional news organizations. So we're kind of scrolling through Channel 7's news feed at the time of this video that we're recording right now. All right. So one more thing, and we'll call it a day. Social media attempts to regulate speech have caused concerns over violations of the First Amendment or freedom of speech. And we have a video here from the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, which has historically taken a very strong interest in First Amendment issues, and in particular on the subject of hate speech and social media.
Social media have been called upon to censor hate speech, and they've tried to do so, but with no more success than any other attempt at censoring hate speech by governments throughout history and around the world. Hate speech is not a recognized legal concept in the United States, which is why I use the air quote. That said, speech that conveys a hateful message, along with speech that conveys any message, may in a particular context be punished if it directly causes specific, imminent, serious harm. Many people are surprised to learn that the First Amendment only applies to government. So social media literally have their own free speech rights to decide that certain voices and messages should be excluded from their platforms. I understand the moral satisfaction of calling for suppressing ideas that we hate, but experience shows that censorship does more harm than good. Countries around the world, including comparable democratic countries in Europe, Canada, Australia, and so forth, have been censoring hate speech for several decades. They have not been effective, most ironically being used to suppress the rights of marginalized individuals and groups. And not surprisingly, a very large coalition of civil liberties and civil rights organizations have been complaining to Facebook for years that it has punished as hate speech their advocacy of equality. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement on behalf of the pipeline protesters. Anybody who is objecting to government policies is disproportionately censored as engaging in hate speech. A more effective response to any idea we hate or consider hateful or dangerous is not to silence it, but to refute it, to explain why. A compassionate approach is much more effective than an angry, hostile, demonizing approach.
So we will pause that there, but that's an interesting point that she is making, that the alternative to censorship is refuting hate speech or refuting what you consider to be false speech with your own speech, and to put information out and make it available that counters what you disagree with. So we will leave it there, and we're going to continue this conversation about the internet and social media, and get into some of the history of the internet next time. So we'll look forward to that. So, and we say to you once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.